referee's permission, we're ready to begin. Do I have the first diver? On 5 meter, Fabian Manaclaus, Stavanger Stupa Club, 101B. Five and a half, 6, 5, 5 and a half. On 5 meter, Alvin Clayson, Pollison's diving, 201C. Four and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5, 6. On 5 meter, Reiti Leitonen, Tirat diving, 101C. Five and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 6. On 7.5 meter, Robert Lundgren, Team Finland, 103B. Six and a half, 6 and a half, 7. On 5 meter, Kevin Sigona, Switzerland, 101B. Six and a half, 7, 6, 7. On 7.5 meter, Aaron Hoffman, Tirat diving, 103B. Four and a half, 5 and a half, 4 and a half, 5, 5. On 5 meter, Stephen Rusnak, Switzerland, 103B. Five and a half, 6 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half. On 7.5 meter, Torlev Rike, Kristiansand Stupa Club, 103B. Four and a half, 5 and a half, 5, 6, 6 and a half. On 7.5 meter, Isak Bergen, Bergen Stupa Club, 103B. Six, 7, 6, 7, 7. On 5 meter, Carl Larmark, Team Skåne, 301C. Five, 4.5, 5.5, 5, 6. On 7.5 meter, Emily Kutayoki, Tirat diving, 103B. Six, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6. On 5 meter, Lucas Lundmark, 103B. Four and a half, 5, 5, 5, 5. Moving on to round 2, on 5 meter, Fabian, 201C. Four, 3, 3.5, 2.5, 3.5. Alvin, on 5 meter, 301C. Four, 3, 4, 3.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Reti, 401C. Six, 5.5, 6, 6, 6. On 7.5 meter, Roper, 403B. Six, 5.5, 7, 7, 6.5. On 5 meter, Kevin, 201C. Five, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5. On 5 meter, Aaron, 401C. Six, 6, 6.5, 7, 7. On 5 meter, Stephen, 401B. 5.5, 5.5, 7, 6.5, 5.5. On 7.5 meter, tour left, 201C. Six, 6.5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5. On 5 meter, Isak, 403C. Five and a half, 6, 6.5, 6. On 5 meter, Carl, 103P. Six, 5.5, 5, 6.5, 6. On 5 meter, Emily, 401B. Four and a half, 3.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Lucas, 401C. Five and a half, 6, 5.5, 5.5. Moving on to round 3, on 5 meter, Fabian, 301C. Three and a half, 3.5, 2.5, 3. On 7.5 meter, Alvin, 103B. Six and a half, 5.5, 6.5, 6, 6. On 5 meter, Reti, 201C. Five and a half, 5, 5.5, 4, 5. On 7.5 meter, Roper, 612B. 6 and a half, 5 and a half, 7, 8, 6 and a half. On 5 meter, Kevin, 301C. Five and a half, 5 and a half, 6, 5 and a half. On 5 meter, Aaron, 201C. Seven, 8, 7. Stephen, 5 meter, 201C. Five and a half, 6 and a half, 6 and a half, 7, 6. On 7.5 meter, tour left, 301C. Five and a half, 6, 5 and a half, 6, 6. On 7.5 meter, Isak, 5231D. Five, 4 and a half, 5, 4 and a half, 5 and a half. On 5 meter, Carl, 5231D. Five and a half, 5 and a half, 4 and a half, 5, 5 and a half. On 5 meter, Emily, 201C. Six, 5 and a half, 5 and a half. On 5 meter, Lucas, 201C. Six, 5 and a half, 6, 5 and a half, 6. Moving on to round 4, on 5 meter, Fabian, 401B. 5.5555. On 5 meter, Alvin, 403C. Four, 3.5, 4.5, 4, 5. On 5 meter, Hertie, 301C. Four and a half, 5, 4.5, 5. On 5 meter, Roper, 5231D. Five and a half, 4.5, 5.5, 5, 6. On 5 meter, Kevin, 401B. Six and a half, 7, 7, 7, 6.5. On 5 meter, Aaron, 301C. Five and a half, 4.5, 5, 4.5, 5.5. On 5 meter, Stephen, 5132D. Five and a half, 6, 6, 5.5, 6.5. On 7.5 meter, Tola, 401B. Six, 6, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5. On 7.5 meter, Isak, 612B. Six and a half, 7, 6. On 5 meter, Carl, 403C. Six, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5. On 5 meter, Emily, 301C. 3.5, 4. On 5 meter, Lucas, 301C. Five, 4.5, 6, 5.5, 6.5. Round 5 on 5 meter, Fabian, 5231D. Three and a half, 2, 2, 1, 2.5. On 7.5 meter, Albin, 612B. Six and a half, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 7.5. On 7.5 meter, Reti, 103B. Six, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 6. On 5 meter, Rope, 105B. Five, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5. On 5 meter, Kevin, 403C. Five and a half, 6, 5, 5.5, 6. On 7.5 meter, Aaron, 105C. Seven and a half, 7, 9, 7. On 5 meter, Stephen, 105C. Four and a half, 5.5, 6, 4.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Tulle, 5132D. Five and a half, 5, 5.5, 5, 5.5. On 5 meter, Isak 5132D. Five and a half, 5, 6.5. On 5 meter, Carl 203C. Six, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5. On 5 meter, Emily 105C. Five and a half, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. On 5 meter, Lucas 105C. Three, 3.5, 3, 3, 3.5. Round 6, Fabian 105, my apologies, 103B, 5 meter. Five, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5. On 7.5 meter, Albin 105B. Six and a half, 6, 6, 6.5, 7. On 5 meter, Erti 403C. Four, 4.5, 5, 5, 5. On 7.5 meter, Rofa 405C. Five and a half, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Kevin 103B. Six, 7, 6, 7, 6.5. On 5 meter, Aaron 403C. 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5, 5.5. On 5 meters, Stephen, 403C. Four and a half, 5.5, 4, 4.5, 5. On 7.5 meter, tall lift, 105B. Judge 2. Can you hold up your score? Oh, thanks. 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 7. On 7.5 meter, Isak, 614C. Judge 3. Judge 3. Six, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 6. On 5 meter, Carl, 303C. Six and a half, 7, 7, 7. On 5 meter, Emily, 403C. Four and a half, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4.5. On 5 meter, Lucas, 403C. Five, 5.5, 5.5, 5, 5.5. Moving on to the final round of dives, Fabian Ranclive, Stavanger Stupa Club, 403C, 5 meter. 3.5, 2.5, 3.5, 2.5. On 7.5 meter, Albin Clayson, Pollison's diving, 405C. Four, 4.5. On 5 meter, Reti Leighton, Tirat diving, 203C. Four, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Roper Rundgren, Team Finland, 5233D. Five and a half, 3.5, 4.5. On 5 meter, Kevin Zagona, Switzerland, 612B. Four and a half, 5, 4.5, 5, 5. On 5 meter, Arden Hoffman, Dinner diving, 203C. Six, 6.5, 7, 5.5, 6. On 5 meters, Stephen Rusnak, Switzerland, 203C. Five, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 6. On 7.5 meter, Tola Frike, Kristen Sands Duper Club, 403B. Seven, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6. On 5 meter, Isaac Bergen, Bergen Stupa Club, 105C. Six, 5.5, 5, 6, 6. On 5 meter, Carl Lombard, Team's Corner, 105C. Six, 6, 6, 7, 6.5. On 5 meter, Emily Kutsuyoki, Tirat diving, 612C. Four, 3.5, 3.5, 4.5. And our final diver, Lucas Lundmark, Tirat diving, 5231D. Four and a half, 5, 4.5, 4, 4.5. Thank you, divers. Thank you, judges. Thank you, recorders. That concludes the boys' C platform. The next event will be the girls' C 1 meter.